4.4, update on Senate Bill 1440, our student transfer bill. Eric?
All right. So this next item is the standing item at your board meetings, chance to get an update on the implementation of SB 1440.
Do we have our Academic Senate President, Michelle?
That's right. She's on her way up there.
Okay.
So. And joining me is Academic Senate President Michelle Pilati and Vice Chancellor Michalowski, who was going to join us, but she actually had to catch a plane. She's going to work on another task force recommendation, which is the Common Core, the Smarter Balance effort to develop some Common Core standards, and they're having a conference that she needed to get to. So in terms of the update on SB 1440, I'll start by laying out a little bit of information about the degree approval. At this point, we've got 497 SB 1440 degrees approved. That's a jump of about, I believe, about 50 degrees since last time you met. And so we're continuing to make progress. We don't have the matrix to show you this week or this meeting because the Academic Affairs Division has been tied up doing some a major overhaul of their curriculum inventory and weren't able to produce it. But
that's a big jump.
Yeah, it's a significant jump.
Great.
At this point, 10 colleges have at least 10 degrees in place.
Wow.
And Fullerton is leading the pack at this moment with 17 different programs in place, 17 different transfer degrees. So momentum's continuing to build, and that's exciting. And it's, you know, those of us who have been working on this initiative really think that what's going to institutionalize it is when you know there's a critical mass of the degrees in place, and then students come to experience them, experience the degrees, see the benefits of the degrees, and it's that demand, that ongoing student demand and expectation that these clear pathways that these clear pathways are in place is really what's going to guarantee that our colleges continue to offer them, and it's going to breathe full life into them. So that's an update on the number of degrees, and then I'll turn it over to Michelle to see what she wanted to add.
Sure. Good afternoon. I think I mentioned last time that one of the things that we were going to be doing around this time was a train the trainer for counselors, and so that just happened a few weeks back, and it was done in conjunction with both the CSU and the UC. And so I mentioned that there are certain advantages for students applying to the UC who complete one of these degrees, so they actually had someone from UC sharing that information. And at the same time, there's various marketing materials that have been developed, and we're distributed those. And he's got one of our bookmarks on the associate degree for transfer, and we need to get copies of that to you. A nice little thing to hand out to students to remind them of the steps involved in getting a degree. So part of the Train the Trainer was having both CSU, UC, and the community colleges there all talking about the degrees, clarifying the reciprocity concept that we've talked about, making it easier for students to move between colleges with these degrees. And so that's happening, and there's now additional conversations going on, working on developing materials for marketing the degrees to high school counselors, to help high school counselors communicate to students about that. On the TMC front, since we last saw you, we have one additional TMC approved in computer science. We also are very, very close to having anthropology completed, and we suspect the anthropology TMC will be available by the end of the month. Philosophy is going back to the drawing board, and Spanish is still working, so we're waiting to see what's happening with both of those. And we're still actively working with both engineering and nursing to see what we can come up with for them. And part of with engineering and nursing is that they're such large majors. It would simplify things if their general education package was smaller, and there's efforts made. I think we may have spoken to you about that before, and there's actually a meeting next week where the CSU will be talking about approving that smaller package of GE courses for those certain majors. So that's about where we're at right now.
And the last item I just note on page 83 of the agenda is a report that the Chancellor's Office staff drafted in response to a request from the board, from Board Member McDougall. I think it was 2 sessions ago. And it's essentially, it's a brief that provides information about the history of transfer in California public higher education, with a focus on the master plan goal of 60-40, which is that the UC and CSU should have 60% of their students in the upper division and 40% in the lower division, which implicitly it speaks to the transfer function, and that as an ongoing goal, that UC and CSU should have their resources shifted towards dealing with upper division courses, and the community colleges would shoulder a portion of the lower division. And so again, the paper on page 83 of your agenda provides some of that history. It talks about some of the various initiatives that our system and the other systems of public higher education have been involved in over the years to try to expand the transfer function. And then finally, there's some data regarding the performance of UC and CSU in terms of achieving that master plan objective. So this is background material provided at your request, and we wanted to present it to you to provide context as you continue to provide important leadership over our current transfer initiative.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, first, I really appreciate all the work that the staff is doing on this and all that we're doing internally to strengthen the transfer function. But I think as a board, we have to recognize that ultimately we are somewhat dependent upon the University of California and the California State Universities to ensure that space is going to be available for transfers from the California community colleges. If it is not available in sufficient volume, our capability of carrying out our role is going to be diminished. And I have to say that the initial presentation of the data on the 60-40 caused me concern in that regard, as well as some of the narrative data about how the systems are having to tighten down given the lack of resources. For example, and more specifically, if you look at what was passed in 1991 by the legislature, it did mandate, and I know it can't mandate to the University of California, but it certainly expressed a very strong intent that the 60-40 element would be operative for the system. So what you have now for the University of California is something that makes it impossible to understand how this mandate is being fulfilled. The data or the information they have provided talks about percentage of freshmen admitted versus percentage of transfer students. That might be interesting information, but to me, it answers no question at all. And if you do a very rough analysis, what that appears to lead to is, rather than 60-40, more of a 20-80 type of proposition, i.e. a tightening of the opportunity for transferring to the University of California. So the first request that I would have is to ask our chancellor, vice chancellors, however, to ask the University of California for information about lower and upper division ratios. That should be as easy to produce as almost any report I can imagine. And that's the information that I think we need. And so I would like to have it, because the initial set of metrics that we have from them elicits more concern than it does satisfaction. Also, as you look at challenges of reduced funding and limited access, you begin to see language in here about specializing criteria for admissions and so forth. And I recognize the economic realities, but there should be no diminution in the ability of transfers to get into the system. In other words, if there's going to be a curtailment of services provided, that curtailment should be across the board. It should not only be in transfers, it should be in entering freshmen, et cetera. We should not be treated adversely because some other options might appear, quote, more attractive, end quote, in terms of the UC. And CSU worries me a little as well in some of the narrative information about how tightening is to occur. So my request specifically is to ask Chancellor or Vice Chancellors to get information from UC regarding lowered upper division ratio of 40-60, which the law calls for at this point. And also to analyze the measures that are being considered by UC and CSU to deal with their fiscal realities to try to ensure that this does not impinge more substantially upon our transfers than it does upon other areas of their operation.
Yeah, Chancellor, is that, or Eric, is that information that we can provide?
All right,
Quick.
Yeah, we'd be happy to pursue that information. We've already, kind of based on your earlier review of this draft and your comments to us, we've reached out to UC, and so we'd be happy to provide an addendum to this report that really fleshes out the issues you raised. Yeah.
So I will make sure to agenda. Okay, any other comments for Michelle or Eric? And thank you both very much. Congratulations on that big jump. That is great work. That's a heavy lift, I know.